Democrats on Capitol Hill cannot catch a break. Just as Senator Alex Padilla's physical clash with Trump administration security officials had given them cause to unite on the otherwise divisive issue of immigration, Israel's attack on Iran has shifted the national gaze onto yet another radioactive topic that has long split the party. While many Democrats quickly condemned conservative Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for launching Israel's assault on Thursday night, many others hailed the decision as a necessary step to put a halt to Tehran's nuclear expansion. The disagreement is an unwelcome one for Democratic leaders, who had rallied forcefully behind Padilla on Thursday afternoon, and were hoping to take that unified front into the weekend, when President Trump is staging an elaborate military parade, and then into next week's holiday, when the House is on a long recess and lawmakers will be back in their districts to confront voters. Instead, Israel's strikes on Iran's nuclear program, a mere coincidence of timing, has dragged Democrats back into the quarrelsome discussion over Netanyahu's aggressive military strategy, which has already been a topic of internal strife amid Israel's demolition of Gaza in search of the Hamas terrorists who attacked Israel on October 7, 2023. On one side of that debate are Israel's closest congressional allies, who quickly cheered Netanyahu's preemptive attacks as an imperative effort to make the region and the world a safer place. The October 7th attacks showed that Israel can leave nothing to chance. The threats they face are real, and inaction can cost lives. Representative Stephen Horsford, a former head of the Congressional Black Caucus, said in a statement. The strikes that began last night in Iran targeted military leaders and nuclear facilities that posed a clear risk for Israel and for future peace in the region. Representative Jared Moskowitz sounded a similar note, warning that allowing Iran to develop nuclear weapons would place Israel, the United States, and partners in the region under direct and constant danger. Iran could have prevented this. They chose this path, Moskowitz said in a statement. Democratic and Republican administrations have all agreed that Iran should never obtain a nuclear weapon, and this will help that bipartisan goal. Many liberal Democrats have a decidedly different view. Those voices have long criticized Netanyahu, especially as the death toll in Gaza has soared beyond 50,000 people, including thousands of children, and they wasted no time blasting the Israeli government's latest foray into Iran. Israel's reckless, escalatory strikes on Iran risk igniting a larger regional war and undermine planned negotiations for a potential new nuclear deal, Representative Pramila Jayapal, the former head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, wrote on X. Netanyahu must not be allowed to pull America into another forever war. Instead, we must immediately push for negotiated de-escalation. Senator Jack Reed, the senior Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee, piled on, warning that Israel's alarming decision to launch airstrikes on Iran is a reckless escalation that risks igniting regional violence. These strikes threaten not only the lives of innocent civilians, but the stability of the entire Middle East and the safety of American citizens and forces, Reed said in a statement. While tensions between Israel and Iran are real and complex, military aggression of this scale is never the answer. The Democratic divisions are not mirrored on the other side of the aisle, where Republicans, with a very few exceptions, are united in lockstep behind Netanyahu's attacks. What Israel's preemptive strike ensured tonight is that Iran's next attack will not be with a nuclear weapon, said Representative Brian Mast, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Keeping the issue in the headlines, Iran responded on Friday by launching a series of retaliatory ballistic missile strikes, some of which targeted Tel Aviv. Tehran also backed out of its plans to meet with U.S. officials in search of an elusive nuclear deal. Those talks had been scheduled for Sunday in Oman. The conflict, both abroad and within the Democratic Party, was not what Democratic leaders had in mind as Congress was leaving Washington on Thursday afternoon. Hours earlier, Padilla had confronted Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Homeland Security Department, at a press conference in Los Angeles, where residents have been facing off against law enforcers to protest Trump's immigration raids. Noem's security detail grabbed Padilla and pushed him into an adjacent hallway, where he was shoved to the ground and handcuffed. The scuffle sent alarm bells through the Capitol, where Democrats have been scrambling to locate a unified response to Trump's aggressive enforcement crackdown in Los Angeles, which has featured the activation of the National Guard without the governor's consent and the deployment of hundreds of Marines. Some Democrats have leaned into the conflict, hoping to keep the focus on Trump's controversial actions, including some who have called for impeachment. Others have used it to revisit Trump's role in the Capitol attack of January 6, 2021. Still others have warned against highlighting a contentious topic, one that had helped propel Trump to the White House, for fear of alienating voters in battleground districts. And party leaders have sought a delicate balance, condemning Trump's tactics in LA while fighting to shift the conversation back to the president's legislative agenda, including Medicaid cuts and tax cuts for the wealthy. He sees the protests in Los Angeles as an excuse to unleash more chaos and distract the American people from the failing economy and his plans to cut Medicaid and food assistance. Representative Pete Aguilar, chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, said earlier in the week. The Padilla affair, in contrast, became a rallying cry, and Democrats in both chambers quickly united in defense of their colleague, accusing the administration of abusing its powers and demanding an investigation into how a sitting U.S. senator could be knocked around by officials of the same government he represents. Many called it an assault. The Trump administration is a disgrace. Secretary Noem is a disgrace. The manhandling of Senator Alex Padilla was a complete and total disgrace, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries told reporters on the steps of the Capitol on Thursday afternoon. A short time later, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus organized a march from the House chamber across the Capitol to the office of Senate Majority Leader John Thune, demanding a response. When Thune was not there, they retraced their steps and marched into the office of Speaker Mike Johnson, who declined to see them. While the effort was led by the CHC, many other Democrats participated, including top figures like Representative Catherine Clark, the Democratic whip, Representative Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, and the heads of the Black and Asian Pacific American caucuses. I want to really emphasize that this is an all-caucus-wide movement, an outrage against the authoritarian, violent behavior of this administration, Representative Raul Ruiz, a former head of the Hispanic Caucus, said outside the Speaker's office. Hours later, after the Capitol had emptied and lawmakers had headed home, Israel launched its strikes on Tehran. President Trump faces a volatile, fast-moving global crisis as Israel and Iran teeter on the brink of all-out war. The situation is shifting by the moment in the wake of Israel's attack on multiple sites in Iran in the early hours of Friday local time. Iran launched a retaliatory barrage against Israel later on Friday. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations said that Israel's initial attacks had killed 78 and injured more than 320. Iranian officials have said they regard Israel's actions as a declaration of war. There has been no such explicit declaration from the Israeli side, but clearly the two nations are in the middle of a grave clash that could easily spiral even further. Such a confrontation has the potential to scramble American politics, too. In some ways, it already has. The price of oil spiked as soon as the Israeli attack happened, rising by more than 8% at one point on Friday. An elevated oil price for any significant length of time could feed inflation and dampen economic growth. That unpleasant combination is one reason why the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by roughly 1.8% on Friday. The broader-based S&P 500 declined by more than 1%. To be sure, a cooling of tensions between Israel and Iran could happen, calming oil prices and producing an instant rebound on the financial markets. But such a de-escalation is far from certain. The more negative scenario, military actions by two foreign nations causing economic trouble in the U.S., would be an especially galling development for Trump. Then there are the intertwined issues of Trump's general attitude toward Israel, his pursuit of a fresh nuclear deal with Iran, and his broader skepticism of interventionist military policies overseas. Trump is on one level a fervent support of Israel. He often boasts to pro-Israel crowds about the actions he took in his first term, including moving the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and facilitating agreements to normalize relations between Israel and two Gulf nations, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. But Trump has had a checkered relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump reportedly took umbrage at Netanyahu accepting former President Biden's victory in the 2020 presidential election. In a 2023 speech, Trump complained that Netanyahu had let us down by backing out of what Trump said was a planned joint action to kill Iranian Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani. The U.S. went ahead and killed Soleimani. In Trump's second term, the president pressed Israel to agree to a ceasefire in the first couple of months of his term. But he also outraged Palestinians and their supporters by suggesting Gazans could be pushed out of the strip of land that is home, which Trump proposed could be redeveloped as a tourist destination. Similar complexities surround Trump's suggestion that there could be a new nuclear deal with Iran. He had excoriated the 2015 deal that was made during former President Obama's tenure, withdrawing the United States from it in 2018, during his first term. But he has recently been pursuing a new agreement, and at one point it was reported that the U.S. might be willing to countenance some element of uranium enrichment on Iranian soil. Trump has more recently said that is not the case. The latest round of talks involving Trump's negotiator Steve Witkoff and Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi had been set for Sunday. Trump, on Thursday at the White House, responded to what were then rumors of an Israeli attack on Iran by saying, "I do not want Israel going in, because I think that would blow it." When the attack went ahead, there was instant speculation that Netanyahu was seeking to vaporize any hope of a U.S. Iran deal. This thesis was strengthened in the immediate wake of the attack when Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued a statement emphasizing that Israel took unilateral action against Iran. But that all changed by the next day. Trump, always sensitive to any suggestion that he has been outflanked or sidelined, seemed to take exception to a Wall Street Journal reporter's question about whether the U.S. had been given a heads-up by Netanyahu, insisting that the White House knew all about the attack in advance. Some of his allies also advanced the idea that the earlier expression of misgivings had been a tactical sleight of hand intended to make the Iranians think an Israeli attack would not come. In any event, the Iranians have now pulled out of the talks. Trump, on Truth Social, posted that he had offered Iran the chance to reach a new deal in recent months, but they just could not get there. Now they have, perhaps, a second chance. In the short term, it appears extremely unlikely that Iran would sign on to a deal on Trump's terms in the wake of an Israeli attack. Such a move would surely look to many in the Islamic Republic and the rest of the Middle East like a humiliation. Trump is also navigating between his instinctual backing of Israel and his more isolationist tendencies. Both impulses have their advocates in different parts of the Republican universe. Among office holders, the views expressed in recent days by Senators Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz were typical. Graham said that if Iran continued to balk at a nuclear deal, the U.S. should go all in to help Israel finish the job. Cruz said, "Israel is acting to defend itself. I stand with Israel." But in the broader MAGA universe, prominent figures including Tucker Carlson and Matt Walsh are exponentially more skeptical. Carlson inveighed against warmongers who wanted direct U.S. military involvement in a war with Iran on X on Friday. Walsh, on the same platform, wrote, "Israel is its own country and perfectly capable of taking care of itself. We do not need to be involved in this, and should not be." While some dismiss Carlson and Walsh as mere media figures, they have a combined X following of roughly 20 million people. The political impact of the current crisis is impossible to predict at this point. It is certainly possible that it could rebound to Trump's advantage, especially if the intensity of the confrontation wanes quickly. In the very short term, Friday's escalating crisis in the Middle East saw a big story from the previous day that was to Democrats' advantage: the handcuffing of Senator Alex Padilla after he sought to question Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, fade toward the margins. But there are dangerous waters churning, and any missteps by Trump could cost him dearly.
Iranian officials on Saturday signaled they could walk back their decision to not attend upcoming nuclear talks with the U.S., but said further negotiations were likely meaningless as the nation exchanges fire with Israel. Esmail Bagay, Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, told reporters it is still unclear what decision we will make for Sunday, according to Reuters. The other side, the U.S., acted in a way that makes dialogue meaningless. You cannot claim to negotiate and at the same time divide work by allowing the Zionist regime to target Iran's territory, Bagay added, per the Newswire. The sixth round of talks between the U.S. and Iran is scheduled to take place in Oman on Sunday. Following tit-for-tat strikes, including Israel's initial surprise attack on Thursday, Tehran announced it would pull out of the talks. Israel's unilateral attack on Iran is illegal, unjustifiable, and a grave threat to regional stability. Oman Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi posted on the social platform X after the attacks. I condemn it and urge the global community to come together to reject Israeli aggression and support de-escalation and diplomacy with one voice, he wrote. Iranian officials cast some blame on the Trump administration for Israel's attack, accusing the U.S. of allowing the strike to happen. Secretary of State Marco Rubio denied involvement in the initial attacks, but the U.S. has stepped up to help Israel intercept missiles from Tehran. President Trump told Reuters Friday that the U.S. knew everything about Israel's Operation Rising Lion, targeting nuclear facilities and ballistic missile sites before the strikes took place. He also, in recent days, said he warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that launching an attack would complicate nuclear deal negotiations. We knew everything, and I tried to save Iran humiliation and death. I tried to save them very hard because I would have loved to have seen a deal worked out, Trump told the outlet. They can still work out a deal, however. It is not too late, he added. The U.S. leader has urged Iran to recommit to a deal that would require the nation to dismantle nuclear developments. There has already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end, Trump wrote early Friday on Truth Social. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire, he continued. No more death, no more destruction, just do it before it is too late. The Israel Defense Forces has already killed several high-ranking Iranian officials and 9 engineers tied to nuclear programs. Iran responded to the initial strikes with a counteroffensive while promising to enact further plans for retaliation, calling the initial strike a declaration of war. With this crime, the Zionist regime has set itself up for a bitter and painful fate, and it will receive it, Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said in remarks released through state media.